One day, when I came home from work, I saw my mother crying. "No, Mom, what happened?" I said. He told me, "Your brother. Look at your brother. He's crazy." When I looked with fearful eyes, I jumped up from my seat and entered the room where my brother was. I didn't notice anything that seemed strange to me. "Ah, Met, is there something, brother?" I said. He told me, "No, brother, I'm fine." Said I didn't want to go over it too much either. The next day, when I came home again, I got a terrible fear, as if the door of our house was moving away while I was climbing the stairs. Just as I was thinking about what was happening, I heard my mother scream. I reached the door of the house with quick steps. I put my hand in my pocket and tried to find my keys. Suddenly, I heard a sound from inside that was other than my mother's sobbing, wheezing, what could not belong to a human being. When I heard this, I rustled into the house, thinking that someone was attacking my mother at home. My mother and my little brother were looking at me in the hall. "Mom, what happened?" I said. "Ahmet has gone crazy again. Your little brother attacked me with F-son." I was so angry. I'm starting to think that either my mom is lying to me or my brother has gone crazy. When I looked at my mother's face again, I met the fearful eyes again. F-son was also very scared, but he still thought it was a joke. F-son is 5 years old. I was angry. Just as I was about to quickly enter the room where Ahmet was, Ahmet suddenly appeared at the door. Would you believe it? I was scared of my little brother for the first time. He was looking at me as if he was hostile. Then he turned around and went into his room. He went after him and said, "Ahmet." When I said, he looked at me again and said, "Leave me alone, brother," he shouted. I was angry. "I will kill you, my son. My father will be here soon. Either you tell me everything, or it's going to be very bad. I'll tell my dad that you attacked my mom." "Okay, brother, but give me some time. I'll tell you everything," said. For the first time, I felt that my brother was lying to me. That night, everyone had gone to bed, so I started watching my brother. I went to his room, looked. He's sleeping. I had just turned around when a voice inside me said, "Your brother is looking at you," he said, and I turned suddenly, but he was not looking. Then, "My son, are you crazy?" I said to myself. I went to bed that night, but what a lay down. I couldn't sleep until morning. It's like when I close my eyes, Ahmet is next to me. "I'm sorry. No, friend, this will not happen like this," I said. "Is it best that I devote the whole day tomorrow to my brother? I will follow him quietly," I said. It was morning. Because I got up early, I told my mom, "I'll be back around 10 o'clock. I said. I left. Ahmet had also woken up. My brother, who was very close to me, was now very far away. He didn't even come near me. Just as he was leaving, he said, "Did you sleep well last night?" Said. I was startled. Without looking at him, I left immediately and went to coffee. When it got to 10 o'clock, I got home with quick steps. I went quietly into the kitchen because my brother's room was visible from there. I had previously tightly covered the curtains of the kitchen so that he wouldn't see me. He left it so that only a tiny hole remained, and he was in a state where he could completely see the room. My brother, he was in the room, and he was sitting on the couch by himself, rubbing his knees. Then suddenly he stopped. I started to feel like my blood was being drawn too, and then suddenly we saw eye to eye. Oh my God! He felt that I was looking through a tiny hole. I felt like I was going crazy. I quickly entered his room. I was blindsided. What the fuck is going on? I said. I have no reaction at all. When I touched him, I felt that he was stiff. I said to my mother, "Mom, run." As soon as I said that, he grabbed my hand so hard that I thought it was breaking. Then, in a wheezing voice, "I'm going to kill you," he said, and fell to the ground. It was shaking, or something like a tremor. His voice had changed. I couldn't tell if it was a wheeze or a wheeze. My mother came running in. Ahmet, my son. My Ahmet. I was, like, frozen. It was like I was just standing there. My mother said to me, "Son, tut. He's going to hurt himself." When he shouted, I came to myself. It was like even my mom and I couldn't hold my brother. Then suddenly he stopped stiffly. It was like it was locked. His head seemed to have fallen back, his eye to have turned black. They looked as if their fingers had turned and broken. He was looking at a point. My mom said, "Don't touch it," he said, and began to read a prayer. By the way, I noticed a notebook deck. I picked it up. When I opened it, I saw that something was written with a different writing style. Then, in a voice that could not belong to a human, "Ahmet, suddenly, don't touch it," he shouted. The notebook fell out of my hand. I was scared. I thought he was going to attack me. His breathing had changed. He was looking at me. I couldn't see the whiteness of his eyes. Then he started tossing his head to the right and left and saying with a strange sound or cackle, "Brother, why did you look? Brother, why did you look?" He was saying something all the time. Suddenly, he stiffened. He raised his arm slowly. He pointed to the window with his pointing finger. Then, looking at me, he said, "It's coming, it's coming." She started crying. "What's coming?" I shouted. My mother was constantly reading surahs. Suddenly, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. When he read the adhan of the teacher, my brother went completely crazy. Sarah fell to the ground like a broken woman. He was shaking. The teacher said that every Allahu Akbar. When you said that, my brother was screaming, and she fainted. My mother and I were in shock. What can we do? What? We started thinking, let's tell Dad. I said. My mother said, he doesn't have faith, he doesn't believe. Mom, what is it that he doesn't believe? Let him show his doctoring. I said, I'm going crazy. Then my brother said, brother. He began to say, Ahmet, my dear brother, what's happening to you? Please tell me. Brother, wasn't I in bed? What am I doing here? What happened to me anyway? Said, don't you remember? I said, no. Said, brother, why is my mother crying? Why, brother? Said, at that moment, the sound of a door was heard. My father had come. Mom, let's tell Dad everything. Don't hide it. We decided to talk to my father that night. The strange thing is that Ahmed was never strange around my father. It was perfectly normal. That night, my father was sipping his whiskey, studying the patient reports. I knocked on the door, went in next to him. What is it? Murat said to my father, Ahmed. I said, but I breathed in and out once. I wanted to talk calmly with my father. Even though I was 25 years old, I was still afraid of him. To my father, I want to talk to you about something. I said. He said, not now. I have an important surgery the next day. I need to check the reports. He said, but I was determined to tell. Ahmed, I said. Please, Dad, just listen. Very important. When he said, okay, but keep it short, said my father, he was calm. I've told you everything that happened today. Everything that happened. He listened to me calmly. And then, suddenly, come on, I don't believe in such things. Okay, that's enough. Get out, I have to work. Said, I was so angry. I was just heading for the door when a terrible scream rose from Ahmed's room. The house lights were going and going. It was scary. The house seemed to crackle from the columns. I turned and looked at my father. Here, Dad, come on, explain this incident, I said. He must have had a bad dream, said. We went to Ahmed's room. My father said, so why did the lights go back and forth? I said, he told me, don't be such an idiot. 21. We live in the century, said. When we approached Ahmed's room, the door, which was open, suddenly closed and locked from the inside. My father said, what the hell is going on? Said, then my brother's screams started rising from the room. It was the first time I saw my father panicked. He told me, break down the door. Said, break down this door. What are you looking at? I broke down the door. When we entered, Ahmed was sitting on the corner of the wall with his back facing us. Snarling. I'm going to kill you. I'm going to kill you. He was saying. My mother came too. The woman began to read surahs aloud. My father said, what are you doing? Said, Ahmed was screaming as he heard the surahs. Then he fell to the ground on his back. He was foaming at the mouth. My father said, Sarah is having a crisis. He went up to her. I was trying to keep Ahmed. The crisis had passed. Woke up. Father, brother, what's happening? What am I doing in my place? She started crying. My father told me, you sleep with your brother tonight. Tomorrow we'll show it to a psychologist, said. I said to my father, Dad, this is more than a psychologist. I said. He said to me, don't talk. Tell me what then, said. I couldn't argue with him. Everyone left the room. Oh, Matt, my dear brother, what's happened to you? Brother, is something happening to me? Said. He seemed to have forgotten. Okay, nothing. I did, but I didn't think you had forgotten. Come on, let's go to bed, I said. We went to bed with my brother on my bosom and started talking. I said to him, I thought you were going to tell me everything. When he said, brother, I would like to tell you everything, but they said they would kill me if I told. Who are they? Who? I said. Please, brother, don't force me. Said. Before going to bed, I read the prayer I learned at school. Ah, I said. Why didn't I listen to my mother and learn the Quran before? I've been through it. My brother, he was asleep, and I was still thinking. I closed my eyes decently for a while. I felt as if a light wind was blowing in the room. I got scared and immediately turned my attention to the right and left. I looked at the window my brother was pointing at when he fell to the ground. I wonder if it was open, because it wasn't on. I was just about to fall asleep in the room, examining left and right, trying to think of nice things, and looking left and right again, when something caught my attention. There was a picture of my brother on the wall. It's a beautiful picture. He always seems to be looking at a point. That is, he doesn't seem to be looking into his eyes when he's lying down. But he seemed to be watching me. I was uncomfortable. I got up, lifted the picture. Lying down next to my brother again, I read the prayer I knew more and more over and over again. The room was quiet. I closed my eyes. Then I felt the door open. I was distracted again. I looked in the direction of the door. The door was really open. Then I started reading prayers again. I was not going to be afraid, because I had faith in the one whose power is infinite, Allah. My faith was at its height that night. Something in me said, don't be afraid. He was saying. Then I turned a blind eye. I felt a weight on the side of my foot. It was as if someone had come up to the bed. It was slowly coming out towards my chest, but I wasn't going to be scared. And I felt him squeezing my body. I opened my eyes, but I couldn't turn my head. Suddenly, he said, I am not afraid of you, but of the one who created you. I said. When he said that, the weight seemed to increase quite a lot. I felt like, please, Mom, come. I started crying. Yes, I was crying inside. Then the door opened. The weight disappeared. I raised my head to my mother. Mother, glad you came, I said. And my mother has no voice. Mom, I said. Son, go to your room if you want. I'll stay with your brother. Said, no, I'll stay. I said. My son, he said, get up at once. I looked at my mother like this, but oh my God. You can't be my mother. What are you? Who are you? He didn't make a sound. He was just staring. His feet were awry. I started reading prayers. Then I don't understand how it happened. Somehow it disappeared. I knew I shouldn't have left my brother alone that night. I fell asleep thinking about what I should do. It was very interesting. In my dream, I was walking down a long, dark corridor. Then I realized that Ahmed was in front of me. As they ran towards him, he was moving away. Ahmed, stop. Ahmed, stop, brother. I was screaming. He said, brother, help, brother. He suddenly disappeared. I started running faster. I stopped when I realized I couldn't keep up. Something in me said, go back. He was saying, turn back. I was out of breath. When I turned around, Ahmed suddenly grabbed me by the throat. He was boring. I was literally drowning when I opened my eyes and realized that Ahmed was choking me and my mother was trying to save me in sobs. I threw Ahmed off me. He was looking at me and laughing. I said I was going to strangle you. I said I was going to strangle you. He was laughing. Turning towards the wall, he started scraping the wall with his nails. When I saw this, I jumped on him. I said to my mother, let's tie him to the bed. I said, we tied my mother and brother to the bed. My brother, he's gone completely crazy. He told me, dirty homo, dirty homo. Don't bring the teacher, don't. Or else, you back. He was saying. How did he understand the teacher? My father went to work early in the morning. He was supposed to go into surgery around 7:00. Before leaving, I said to my mother, bring Ahmed to the hospital. Let's show him to the psychologist. He said to my mother, I'm coming now. I left the house. I was going to find a teacher. I found a teacher with the advice of my friend. I told him everything and brought him to our house. As we were climbing the stairs together, the teacher began to read a prayer. Mom left the door open because she saw us coming. When we approached the door suddenly closed. Mom, he opened the door again. I went in. The teacher did not enter. Looking at me, he said, I can't get in the first place. Said, why? When I asked, he said, this house, it's not good at all. Who sold this place to you and when? What's that got to do with it? I said, the same thing happened to the person who sold you this place. And how do you know? I said, the person who sold it very cheaply, and he didn't say anything at all. He said to me, who recommended me to you, said, let my friend stop. I said, then called their son Dech. Why is that? I said, you call Dech's son. I have called. Let alone, I ran into you today. Hello, yes, I'm listening to you, so that you can find me a teacher. Let alone, he suddenly started laughing on the phone. He said to me, have you been drinking? He asked. No, what's that got to do with it? I just told you. My friend, didn't you send me to my hometown last time? When I said that, I was shocked. Haven't you come yet? Yes, then who did I talk to? When I said, who? Oh, come on. I have a job. I'll call you when I'm done. He said, hung up the phone in my face. What's going on? While I was thinking, the teacher quickly entered the room where my brother was. I was, like, frozen. You, then who are you? I could only say. When the teacher entered, my brother said, you. I know you. He gave a terrible scream. Teacher, I said to my brother, in the name of the Lord, the Creator. He created man from a clot of blood. You poor thing, he said, and started reading surahs. I still hadn't figured out what was going on. Who was this person? Then he started talking to my brother. Leave these people alone, said. My brother said, brother, get him out of the room. She started crying. I was still experiencing the shock of the phone. Then this person said to me, come on, hold your brother tight. He also called my mother, but before holding her, he asked us to perform ablution. We got it. I mean, the way my mom showed me. Then we went to my brother's. The teacher began to read the Quran at the beginning. He told us, come on, hold on now. When he said, Mom and I hired him right away. My brother, he was screaming. His eyes kept changing from black to blood red. Then his bed started to shake. The wardrobe doors in the room were opening and closing. There were sounds of plates breaking from the kitchen, while the lamps were being turned on and off. The lamp in the room we were in exploded. Then there was a sudden silence. My brother, he fainted. Is it over? I said, turning to the person I had brought as a teacher. No, it never ends as long as you stay here, said. Before you, a family lived here. They were a very nice family. Then, a paranormal situation occurred in their young son. At the beginning, their son tried to drink water at night. As we were walking along the corridor, the door of the room where we are now opened. At that time, they only used this room for guests. When the child entered to see who opened it, the door suddenly closed and the child screamed from inside. And then, when I said, okay, that's it, and then it was the end, said. He said to me, do you know the Quran? No, I said. And you, Auntie, said. Mom said, a little, said. Turning to me, he said, why didn't you find out? Said, I couldn't answer. No, and do you know that evil comes from God? Said, yes. I said, how is your father's faith? When I asked, I couldn't answer again. He said to me, that's your weak link. Said, move out of here in 3 days, or one of your family will get hurt. Said, what? Move out. How can I make my father accept this? When he said, that's none of my business, said, he turned towards the door. He was leaving. Then he looked at me from the outside door and said, you know that kid who went to drink water? I couldn't say anything. I just said, yes. I shook my head in the form of, that was me, he said, and walked away quickly. I stood up quickly. I ran to the door. I haven't finished my questions yet, but he was already gone. When the teacher said so that day, my mother and I said, we can't stay in this house anymore. We talked. My brother also came to his senses. We barely convinced my father. And exactly on the 3rd day, here, something happened to my father, and now his religion has become a whole person, and we moved out of that house. 3 years had passed deck. One day, my job fell into that neighborhood. When I left, I said, "Let me look at the house." I said, he had a huge garden. The house had 3 floors. My father gave it to a trustee. Let it be demolished so that houses can be built. But there have always been setbacks in the demolition works of the contractor. One of the workers was out of his mind, and one was seriously injured. When the contractor realized that he couldn't wash either, that house was just abandoned to its fate. They had put a lock on the garden gate and said, "It is dangerous and forbidden to enter." There was a sign hanging that said, as I was passing by, looking at the garden of the house, I saw the door of the house open. The house, it was like it was calling me. I turned around without looking back and left, and I never came close to that neighborhood again, not even within a mile of that house.